سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم.
Okay, so today's discussion is off the common phrase that people probably text and use when they're talking on WhatsApp or Messenger or whatever. It's I can't even. It's when you're at a moment of frustration and you can't really express yourself. So you don't even finish a sentence, you just say I can't even, you leave it at that. So I have a hadith here to quickly talk about this. I'll read it off, and then after that we'll talk about why I picked this hadith. Again, it's coming from the Salihin, Kitab al-Adab. And then we'll see what we can derive or understand from this hadith. Muawiyah radiallahu anhu reports that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, well, he reports that while I was in Salat with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a man in congregation sneezed. And I responded with Yarhamakullah. The people stared at me with disapproving looks. Meaning they were in the middle of Salah, they said Allahu Akbar, they started praying, and someone sneezed. And after they sneezed, this Sahabi said Yarhamakullah. Now we know in the rules of prayer, you're not allowed to say or speak, right? But in the early stages of Salah, it was allowed to speak. Salah was not exactly how we understand it. It became more defined. But the more defined point is this, that you'll see towards the end. But this Sahabi said, Yahmakullah. It's something you don't say. Actually, when I was younger, I did this too. I was like 8 or something. I was praying Salah with my cousins. And then I sneezed and I said, Alhamdulillah. And my cousin started laughing in the Salah. All of us got messed up, right? But I didn't know any better. So this is what he did. He said, Yahmakullah. And then everybody started looking at him with disapproving looks. He said, so I said, may my mother lose me, why are you staring at me? Now he's actually talking, like he's actually talking to people in the middle of Salah. Like he just stops Salah to look at people and say, why are you guys all looking at me? Now this is a big deal, right? Yahmakullah is one thing, and that's one discussion. Now he's having a full-on conversation with people in Salah. Now why are you guys all looking at me? Thereupon, they began to strike their thighs with their hands. When I saw them urging to me to remain silent, I became angry, but restrained myself. So he waited the entire Salah, and the Salah passed by, and he's upset the entire time because he's trying to say, Yahmakullah, he's making dua for somebody in the middle of Salah because they sneezed. He's following the Sunnah, he doesn't understand what's going on, and people are upset. But he waits. When the Messenger of Allah concluded his Salat, he said, I have never before seen an instructor who gave better instruction than he. May my father and mother be sacrificed for him. He neither remonstrated me, nor beat me, nor abused me. He simply said, it is not permissible to talk during Salat because it consists of glorifying Allah, declaring His greatness, as well as the recitation of the Quran. Or he said words to that effect. I said, oh Allah's Messenger, I have but recently accepted Islam and Allah has favored us with Islam. So he wasn't completely fully aware of all the rules when it comes to Salah. He was aware that if someone sneezes, you say, Yarhamakullah. So in the middle of Salah, he just said that because he's following the rules that he does know. But he didn't know the additional rules. The hadith continues, well, this is on a different point. He continues to tell the Prophet ﷺ, there are still some people among us who go to consult soothsayers. The Rasul said, do not consult them. Then I said, there are some of us who are guided by omens. He said, these things which come to their mind, they should not be influenced by them. Now, our discussion is on the first point of the hadith. So what we want to talk about are a few things for today's discussion. So, and it's noted, the cure to anger is the last thing we'll talk about, and it's on the next slide. So I say that for you guys towards the end, for those of us who can stick around, inshallah. But let's discuss each of these small aspects and see what we can learn from this hadith, inshallah. The first point is that the anger of the Sahabi himself. If you were in that Sahabi situation, ask yourself, did he do anything incorrect? Technically, no. Looking at it from our perspective, 100% he was incorrect because he broke his Salah and he's speaking to somebody in Salah. If we are praying Asr after this, and then Mahmoud is like, Alhamdulillah, in the middle of Salah, all of us would be confused, like, why are you doing this? So yes, in that sense, he's wrong. But from the knowledge that he has, from the knowledge that he's been given, is he wrong? No. From what he has, from what he knows, he is not wrong. This is very important to keep in mind for the rest of the discussion. So our sentiment towards an individual can change once we understand how much knowledge they actually have. Right? Our sentiments towards a baby without intellect is different than an adult or a college student with intellect. Right? If a baby cries when they're hungry, we're going to feed the baby. If a college student cries when they're hungry, we're going to be confused and say, why are you crying? Get yourself some food. Right? It's two different things. The person's knowledge matters. The person's knowledge matters. Now, the anger of the Sahabi himself, he quickly reacted and spoke up, right? He said, why are you guys all looking at me? That was the first reaction he had. He kind of burst out of anger. And the other Sahaba, they cannot react because they don't in Salah, they cannot say anything or do anything outside of the actions of Salah, so they hit their thigh. That's about all they could do, right? I guess as a side note, you can say that for us, if the person leading Salah makes a mistake, the brothers can correct their recitation in Salah, right? Or they can say something like Subhanallah. The hadith says to say Subhanallah. Usually we hear people say Allahu Akbar in the masjid, but the Sahih hadith actually says to say Subhanallah. And if a sister notices a mistake, she can clap her hands. This is how the hadith says, to correct that, right? This is a side note for us to learn. Nonetheless, going back to this, they clapped, they slapped their thighs to show him, hey, calm down. His reaction to that was actually admirable, because he said, I noticed this, and then what? I controlled myself. I controlled myself. This was the reaction and the anger of the Sahabi, radiallahu anhu. And who reports this? Who gave this narration? Who gave this narration, guys? Who's the one who narrated this hadith? You guys pay attention? The Sahabi himself. The entire hadith goes like, I. Look, he put himself on the spot. Usually when Sahaba, they make mistakes, their names are not mentioned in hadith. Look, it says, Muawiyah, he reports, I did this. So you know who did this. The only reason we know it is because he himself mentioned it. Usually in hadith, when Sahaba, when someone makes a mistake, their names are not mentioned. But he himself mentions this, right? Something to note. Nonetheless, his reaction is that. Now look at the reaction of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When we are in the masjid, because I know this is for college students, but it doesn't mean we don't go to the masjid. We talked about this last week when I said that a part of our focus in terms of charity should be going towards the masjid, right? When we're in the masjid and someone's phone goes off, some of us will have these outbursts or these reactions. In the middle of Salah, we'll be so upset. Like, why is your phone going off? Why didn't you remember to silence it? Why didn't you put on vibrate? We have these thoughts. And we become frustrated. And if we're leading Salah, we might even make a comment if we could. Some people don't even lead Salah, they still make a comment. You'll see this, it's very sad actually. People generally forget to turn off their phone. Some people could be having family emergencies at home where they're like, I have to have my phone on in case someone calls me, so I have to know what's happening. And some people, I want you to understand this, some people don't know how to put their phone on silent. It's true. There's an uncle actually in the masjid. He was trying his best to put it on silent. I didn't realize what was going on. He doesn't know how to use his phone correctly. He's a very old man, and he's just trying to figure out his phone. He doesn't know how to use it correctly. And then this other brother told me, hey, go help him. I was helping with what? I was confused, like, what does he need help with? I'm confused. He's like, he doesn't know how to put his phone on silent. And that day I was like enlightened. I was like, okay, there are people who just don't know. Right? So if that uncle's phone goes off, imagine how he would feel if people reprimanded him afterwards. He's already been trying his best to put it on silent. He doesn't know how to use a touch phone correctly. Right? I could just say, oh, it's just right here, iPhone, just put it, whatever. But he doesn't know that. Remember how I talked about other people not knowing? So if it's in our masjid environments and someone's phone goes off or someone's child starts crying or something happens, we react suddenly. We react if the fan is not turning fast enough and it gets hot in Ramadan or something. We react very quickly to these things. Look at the reaction of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. After the salah ended, all he says is just the instruction itself. We are not allowed to speak in salah, as salah's purpose is to glorify Allah. That's it. He's not saying, why did you speak? Who was it that spoke? Let's call you, like he wasn't calling anybody out. Everyone knows who the person is, because there's only one guy talking in salah. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he mentions it, all he says is simple. He's just like, we're not allowed to speak in salah. So calm. And look, he was so gentle with the way he said it. Let's go back to the narration. Let's appreciate this. If you guys can see it, I don't know if you guys can see it, I'll read it again. That he caused the Sahabi to say what? I have never before seen an instructor who gave better instruction than he. May my father and mother be sacrificed for him. He neither remonstrated me, nor beat me, nor abused me. This is how gently he spoke when Rasulullah may have been, and had every right to be, frustrated. Right? And then you go on to the hadith later on to understand, oh no, like poor guy, he just didn't know any better. Right? And as soon as we learn that, we all feel better about the Sahabi. Just like if we were to understand those people in our masajid who come and their phone goes off, or the child is crying, or someone makes an abrupt noise for some reason, or causes a disturbance, even in a lecture or a halaqah or an organization or an event, if we knew that person's situation, we would be more sentimental. We would care more. We would care more to control our anger. And that's usually, we'll go to the next slide and talk about cure to anger. That's usually why we end up slipping so much. Now, I want to talk about a few things just quickly and briefly, because the most of the crux of the discussion is on the cure to anger itself. Anger in the college environment, right? So they have different subcategories, and we'll talk about them as much as we can, inshallah. So professors, students, and exams. So professors upset us, students upset us, and exams upset us, right? Sometimes the professors upset us more than the exams. Even the exams are just hard for us, right? We don't really know what really upsets us sometimes. Maybe it's just our grade, I don't know. But we just get upset. And that's just the effect of taking a class in college, right? It could be that the class is very hard. You could have the best of professors. I had an amazing professor, super cool, very enthusiastic. It was dynamics. But man, the class, the material was extremely challenging, So the material upset me. Then I had a professor who was terrible, to say the least, right? And the material was just fine, and that upset me. He himself upset me. So, and of course, students also upset you too. Maybe you have to work in a team where your teammate isn't doing any work, right? Where your teammates are not doing any work, and you have to kind of lead your team, right? You're not really leading it, you're just doing everything on your own, right? So these situations and instances come up in the college environment in terms of dealing with your school, dealing with your classes, dealing with your exams. This is one type. Then we have another type. Student orgs. MSA is not the only org on campus. Might be surprising for some of you guys, but it's not the only org on campus. There are multiple and many orgs out there, right? And I'm sure almost all of us, or at least most of us, are involved in some org in one way or another. Even if it's not the MSA. If you're in the MSA, then this already counts, right? But it's not just that MSA is the only org and that's where you practice adab and akhlaq. MSA is not that it's not the only org where you do that. Whether you're in the bio club or PPHS or bioengineering society, whatever you're in, you have to have akhlaq in all of those things. So org settings, same thing. How do you deal with your org members? How do you deal with your teammates? How do you control your anger for those situations? It could come to a point where you're dealing with someone who is in a lower position than you, or you're dealing with someone who's in a higher position than you. And frustrations can come from both ends. How do you deal with that? It happens. And I'm expecting most of us to be in some org at least, right? If you're going to put on your resume or something. And then the last one, college environment, very common, also in high school environment, right? Breakups, and it actually frustrates people, right? I'm not talking about what's halal and haram, I'm not talking about that. An impermissible relationship is an impermissible relationship. That's not a discussion right now. But what happens is reality, which are breakups. And that does make people upset. And that does cause a lot of frustration. And all of these things, right? These things affect us in different ways. The anger that stems from each of these situations and instances affect us differently. For example, if you're upset at a professor, if you're upset at an exam, you're more likely to skip that class, right? If a professor upsets you, or you get a bad grade in an exam, you might be so turned away from that class, you don't want to study anymore, or you don't want to put more time into it. You might study less for that class because you feel like there's no point putting more time into this. I feel like I already messed up. What's the point of me going back? This professor isn't helpful. Why would I even go to office hours? You become less inclined to that. Same thing with working on a team project. If you have one of your intro classes where you work on a team project, like Engineering 100 or something. I'm giving classes that I took, sorry. Right? Where you have to work in a team setting, and your teammates are demotivated. So you feel like, man, I don't want to work on this project anymore. I don't want to work on this project anymore. And then you give less towards that effort. That's one example. The second example is student orgs. Student orgs. Now you can't work with your teammates, so what do? Same thing. Your responsibilities drop. Or you do your responsibilities, but you develop a sense of dislikeness towards your teammate. You develop a sense of dislikeness towards your teammates. So now you're doing all this quote-unquote great work with part of your resume, and you're establishing all these things and programs and events and showing how this org is succeeding, and it was nothing before, and now it's something. And in the midst of it all, you're angry, you're frustrated, no one knows about it, but you're upset. And that just builds up inside of you. And the breakups, right? That's probably even more detrimental than the first two. Breakups are probably more detrimental than the first two. Because breakups affect college students in such a way that I would presume where it affects everything about their life, everything about their day. That their studies slacken, right? They mess up in their orgs, they mess up in how they're studying, how they're doing on their grades, how they're behaving with their own family members, how they're behaving with their friends, how they're interacting with people, even where they sit, how they sit. It impacts them. It impacts students. Only if they allow it to. Only if they allow it to. We have to wait and see how this cure to anger thing comes up towards the end to understand how we can prevent this from taking over our lives. Because it's okay to be angry. It's okay to feel anger. I don't want to say to be angry because that might indicate some form of action being carried out. It's okay to feel anger, right? But you have to have patience. You have to have patience. That'll be the first point that's noted in the next slide. We'll talk about that. And I also mentioned the next point, anger within our homes. That maybe it has nothing to do with what's happening on campus. It has nothing to do with your classes. It has nothing to do with your professors, nothing to do with your exams. You're a great student perhaps. Maybe you have a great GPA. Maybe you have everything sorted out. But there's something just always going on with you and your dad. Or something always just going on with you and your mom. Something always is going on with you and your sister or your brother. Something's always happening. Let's say you're not worried about marriage, you're not worried about a career, you have a great internship, everything is lined up, but at home, something is always wrong. Something is always misaligned. And anger and frustration comes in the house. Has nothing to do with what's happening on campus whatsoever. But you yourself, as I mentioned this a few lectures ago, are a college student, and life is more than just college, right? And you are impacted in different parts of environments, right? So these things come at you left and right. You have family, you have haram relationships, you have exams, you have professors, you have students, you have organizations. You have to deal with all of it, I'm sorry. And that's like part of life. So these are all things that kind of come up for us, and we have to be wary of how they come up. Now, before I go into cure of anger, I want us to think about something, because maybe some of the things I've said reminded you of these moments of anger in your life right now. Maybe, and I'm not doing it to trigger you, but actually I'm doing it to trigger you in a good way where you remember it, so now you can pinpoint it and you can maybe work towards fixing it, right? But before we go into that, I want us to quickly just take a step back and think about the positive end to all of this, just slightly for a second, because I feel like sometimes we don't focus on that. We are rushing too much to figure out what the solution is to all our problems, but we don't acknowledge the blessings that we currently have. So I want to just take a slight second to detract us from this discussion of anger and kind of pause and just have a moment of gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now look, I talked about this, I was talking about reliance, tawakkul yesterday. Look, the fact that the biggest problems that you and I might have is an exam grade is a blessing. The fact that the biggest problem you and I have are bills to pay is a blessing. The fact that you and I, the hardest thing we have to deal with right now is that a haram relationship ended. Means what? We are not in haram anymore. Meaning what? Allah is pleased with you and me, you and I. It's a blessing. The fact that we have a family to be angry with is a blessing. When you look at things a little bit differently in life, you understand it better. You'll appreciate it more. So let's look at these things one more time. Let's look at this list that I have up. Let's look at it in the lens of gratitude, inshallah, before we talk about the anger. The professors, students, and exams. That we are living in 2020 in the United States of America, where many of our parents, if not all of our parents, many of our parents, and if not our parents, our grandparents, or somebody in our ancestry, migrated to come here, to sacrifice for us, right? We understand this. A sacrifice that you and I probably could not handle. A sacrifice you and I probably could not handle, and I can check us on that because we don't even want to go outside of Dearborn. We commute to Dearborn. So think about commuting to a different country. Forget, you can't even handle Ohio. You can't even handle going to the Upper Peninsula. They moved countries for us. Okay. For what? There are people, there are brothers and sisters. In front of me, I have brothers to my left and sisters to my right. There are places and people who are deprived, forget Islamic education, education in general, no education. And forget about sisters getting a chance or brothers getting a chance. No one's getting a chance. No one's getting it. Forget the whole gender gap. And there's a gap everywhere. There's a gap, period. That education is not accessible. Education is not accessible. That if the government of that country wants to hold a strike, a government strike, that day, there is no school for you that day. That might sound fantastic for someone who's in 3rd grade or 4th grade and they want to skip out of school. Sure, it sounds fantastic. But when that 3rd grader becomes 18 and 19 and has nothing to show on his or her resume in terms of education or credibility and has nowhere to go after that age, has nowhere to get upper education, then that really sucks at that moment. Because you realize, man, I don't even have any education to show. Brothers and sisters, we have finished high school and we're here as college students, alhamdulillah. Wow. And there are young boys and young girls who only wish they could be in school to learn. Right? There are young boys and young girls who only wish they could be in school to learn. That's the first point of gratitude. So the exams, the professors, and the students, if you think about it, fine. You want to complain about your exams, fine. I did this when I was taking, I think it was thermal, can't remember, or fluids, one of the classes, and I was comparing exams with my friends, right? So when I compared my exam with him, I felt a lot better, because his exam was from Ann Arbor, right? And my exam was from, I was like, cool, bro, I remember understand your question, so alhamdulillah, right? So if you're really upset about your exam, think about the exam you could have had, right? Because I'm telling you, there are harder exams. Sometimes, as college students, we take too much pride in the degree we have and the classes we're taking. Just because it's a 300 or 400 something, it's not that big of a deal. Go talk to someone with a PhD. It is not. It is not. Don't get ahead of yourselves, right? And we let that arrogance turn into anger. That, why? In one way, we'll show how smart we are. We're taking these upper level classes. In another way, we'll show our frustration. Why am I taking this class? I don't understand this sometimes. But anyway, that happens. Next point, student orgs. Subhanallah, alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed an org like MSA to actually be existing in college campuses. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. The MSA, I was telling this to, I forgot who it was. After 9/11, the MSA at Dearborn had a 9/11 security squad. That was very cool. They actually had that. I met the president from that time, and he told me that they actually had this. He's the president of Al-Henry Foundation, if you guys know him or not, currently. And they actually had that. MSA provided security for brothers and sisters on campus after 9/11. We have an org like this. An org like this that actually allows us to be in a setting like this, to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala right before we go see Birdie, right? This is how these orgs are helping. And I'm sure orgs also help in setting up all the other foundations we have. Think about it, the org that you're so upset about, in terms of the responsibilities you have towards that org, that is that same org you and I put on our resume to boast and brag to internships and for upper level colleges or medical schools or whatever, that, yeah, I was part of this org, I had this position, and you're gonna go on and on at that point. You're gonna take all your pride at that point. That, yeah, we made this many events happen, we fundraised this much money, and we were able to collect this much, and we were able to promote this much. But when you're actually doing it, you're complaining the entire time. And you're angry about it. You do yourself a favor. Whatever orb that upsets you right now, take it off your resume. See how that feels. You don't want to do that, right? Be grateful for that orb. Whatever, it doesn't have to be MSA. Maybe it's Bio Club or PPHS or whatever it is you're part of, right? It doesn't have to be MSA. But before we become angry about it, please appreciate it. Nothing to appreciate about breakups. Sorry. Haram relationship is a haram relationship. I'll end at that part. Next thing, cure to anger. And wait, why am I ending it so harshly at that point? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if He's not happy with something, there's no way I can justify that and make it look nice for you. There's nothing for me to make it look nice and say, oh yeah, think about the person who was dating for 7 years and they broke up. Okay, you dated for 2 years and you broke up. Okay. I don't want to be sentimental towards that at all. And I just choose not to be. Because it doesn't take us anywhere. It doesn't take us anywhere. If anything, we should be regretful towards it, Allah will forgive you. Allah will forgive you. If you're regretful and you're sincere towards it, Allah will forgive you. Allah is very forgiving. He's very merciful. Right? لا تقنطوا من رحمة الله. He said, do not despair in the mercy of Allah. Not despair in the mercy of Allah. Allah will forgive you. No problem. Any sin you and I do, Allah will forgive if we sincerely repent. No problem. Just don't justify it. Right? Don't expect someone to make you feel better about the sin. Sins are supposed to make you feel bad. That's natural. If you feel bad, that's good. We're supposed to feel bad. Not just you, me. I'm supposed to feel bad. Everyone is supposed to feel bad about their sins. This is something natural. You know, if anything, that in today's time, we're told more about being more emotionally intelligent, being more sensitive towards certain topics, being more adaptive towards different people with different backgrounds, being more culturally competent, correct? One of the things we should be more culturally competent towards is the idea of being sad towards sin, because that is going away from our society. That if we sin, we look at it like, it's whatever. I ask for forgiveness, but it's whatever. And then maybe one day you laugh about it, you think about it, you say, oh, remember when we did this? How do you do that? How do you do that? Remember when you did what? You ask for forgiveness. You ask Allah to forget it. Why are you reminding someone else about it? Why would we do that? So when it comes to relationships, for example, if it's in the past, leave it in the past. If it's in the past, leave it in the past. If Allah forgot about it, don't bring it back up. Right? Allah doesn't forget, He's Al-Alim. But if he forgot it as in He took it off your deeds, and He replaced it with good deeds, because you sincerely repented, khalas, you have good deeds in your account. Move forward. Because that's what happens, right? When you do something bad, and you sincerely repent, what does Allah do? He replaces it with what? Good. So everything that you did is good. But I'm not going to come and sit here and say that, oh, be grateful for the relationship you had. If Allah doesn't like it, that doesn't make sense, right? That doesn't make sense. So that's how we have to approach it. We have to allow people to naturally feel sad about sins, enough so they can sincerely repent. And then after that, we motivate them, we encourage them, we help them, we support them, and we let them progress in life. It has to be natural. It has to be with love, without judgment. That I could know someone who dated, and I could talk to him like I would talk to him any other day. It doesn't change anything between me and him, right? He's the same guy as me. We have different sins. Allahu A'lam, Allah knows best, right? But that's the approach we want to have, nonetheless. So cure to anger. A few things to mention. The first thing I said was patience itself, right? First thing, have you noticed when people argue or get angry and frustrated? Let's say you're watching a show or something. If you were to watch a show where two people are arguing or fighting, and two people are upset and angry, you know those court cases in TV shows or something, or like movies when they have court cases and stuff. And you see the person standing there being questioned, right? And the lawyer is super calm the entire time. They're asking questions A, B, C, D. Super calm. Person answering is giving calm answers in the beginning, right? Then they start getting triggered. Calm and flat. You guys know this. And then they'll ask one final question and they blurt out everything, right? Like, they're super angry. They let go of everything. And the lawyer still comes, oh, rest my case. Go back, sit down. No problem. What happened? Why did that person lose? And there are cases when you watch those shows, the person who blurts out everything is actually innocent. But the words they said made them look guilty, right? That also happens. You have to be patient to first collect yourself. So cure to anger, the first thing we need to understand is that, look, regardless of what's making me angry, whether it's the organization I'm working with, whether it's my mom or dad at home, whether it's the exams that I'm taking, whether it's the grade I got from my exam, all of those things, the first thing I need to do is remember that if I don't collect myself, I'm going to become like that man or woman on that stand who just gets triggered. And I'm going to look just as silly as that person. And you know who the lawyer is? Who's asking me the questions? Who's that? That'll be an interactive question for you guys. Who's the lawyer who's asking the questions? Who? Oh no, Shaitan. He's just triggering you. Shaitan's triggering you the entire time. Shaitan is triggering you the entire time. He's just poking you, just slowly. Get angry, get angry, get angry. You know, like those like little siblings, like I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you, but you still get angry. It's like that. Shaitan is just poking you the entire time. Get angry. He's provoking you. If you have patience, you can collect yourself. And you'll see the best of leaders are those who have patience, right? They wait, they think, then they respond. To say, let's think about this thoroughly. I'll get back to you. I'll get back to you is the best answer you can tell anybody. At least that's why I'm working at a company. I'll get back to you. Say I'll get back to you. Calm yourself down, right? Calm yourself to collect yourself. Next thing, identify variables and constants, right? Identify variables and constants. For example, you getting an exam grade back, and it's not the grade you wanted. You get super angry about it. You got an 89%. Darn it, right? What are you gonna do? Well, that grade won't change. Even though you might email the professor and ask for like all these questions and get a point back, right? Most likely the grade might not, I'm not used to that. I don't know, whoever it is. Maybe you guys are used to it, right? I don't bother going back to my professors because I'm just like, whatever. But let's just say, okay, let's put 87%. You won't get 3% back, right? That's a lot to get back. If you get 1% but not 3%. I've noticed that more with pre-med students. They are more ambitious to get more points back. So this from my experience. Nonetheless, that exam grade will not change. The exam is over. It's been a few days since it's been over. Maybe even a week if a teacher is late on giving responses back. So it's been like a week since you took the exam. Your life has continued on since that exam. You got the grade back and now you're just so upset. And nothing will change about that grade. Nothing will change about that grade. That's a constant. It's not a variable anymore. It doesn't change. It's a constant. That 87% constant, right? Variables are different. Variables are different. Variables are things you can change. You can change. Look at the example of the hadith. When Rasulullah was leading salat and the man came and spoke. For the duration of salah, no one spoke. Because the rule of salah is constant. You cannot speak at that point, right? So as much as we want to tell that sahabi, hey, don't speak, we can't. The most we can do is this. Once salam is given and salah is concluded, now it's a variable. Now the situation is a variable. You can tell them, hey, this is, so what's an example more to our life? When someone upsets us and angers us, if we harshly respond on the spot, that's a variable. We can control that. We can choose to wait and tell them at a different time, and we can choose to wait and tell them at a different place. That's a variable. When you can choose and channel your anger in a different way, that's a variable. The things that happen to trigger your anger are constants, and how you react is a variable. How you react is a variable. So if someone really angers me, for example, if that professor does change my grade for some reason, that grade can become a variable if I reach out to them and say, hey, it looks like you incorrectly graded my exam paper, I should get 5 points back, and now you have a 92%, right? That's okay. But you getting mad at that point, seeing your grade and screaming or telling your friend, oh my God, I can't believe this happened, adding all these extra words to your tongue, to your deeds, for no reason, that's unnecessary. That's unnecessary, right? If the only action you can take after an exam ends is to notify the professor, right? And tell them, can you double check this? Then fine, that's a variable you can carry out. But everything else beyond that is unnecessary. Because it won't change. If you go and complain to your friend cannot go and change your grade. She or he can't. Right? And if you start yelling, that won't go to your professor's ears either. So why do that? So identify your constraints, constants and your variables. Third thing, consequences. Where will your reactions take you? Right? So if the Sahaba who were in the Salah spoke back to him, what would have happened? Their Salah would be broken, right? And they would have been held accountable because they knew. Right? Consequences are a real part of life, and people just do not acknowledge it. And more importantly, it goes towards high school and college students. High school and college students, especially high school students, but they are not here, don't understand what consequences are. They don't understand it. We don't understand what consequences are. We don't think about what our actions will do to us. We don't understand where they will take us. The fact that, and I'll give you an example. You know what the prime consequence? I'll show you right now. Ready? Slide before that. Breakups are a consequence of a relationship. Breakups are a consequence of a relationship. Period. You want to know a bad consequence? Right there. Probably the worst of, not the worst, but a very terrible consequence for people to deal with. In high school and college, predominantly. Because they don't think things through. They think everything is going to go as how they plan. Breakups are a consequence of relationships. That's just how they work. But going back to this, wrong slide. It's not just that. It's not just breakups. And I'm not talking about dating in this lecture. It's beyond that. Anger within your house, anger within your home. When you get angry at your mom and your dad, or your brother or your sister, and you lash out at them, and you say words that you don't really mean. You say words that you end up regretting a few minutes later. You say things, and you might even do things. Allah protect us from domestic violence. I mean, you might even do things beyond that. That's a big deal. Those have real dire consequences. The fact that you can cause trauma to somebody when you're arguing, if you are someone who is likely to argue and get upset very frequently at the house, my brother and sister, what makes you think you won't be like that when you have children in the house and you yourself are a father and a mother? It will continue on. It will continue on. Very simply put. Even though you're saying, and I'm saying, that, oh no, but when I'm a father and a mother, when I'm a father, let's say for the brother is, and I'm a mother, and let's say my issues with my parents, for example, my issues with my parents, I won't be with my parents, these issues won't be there. Sure, those issues won't be there. But your natural inclination towards arguments and frustrations and reactions and anger will remain. They'll remain. And if you think that you're not going to be arguing and fighting and reacting to someone who's going to be your wife or your husband who knows you less than your parents, then you're mistaken. Right? You're mistaken. And if you think you're going to be more respectful towards your wife than your mother, you're mistaken. If you think you're going to be more respectful to your husband than your father, you're mistaken. To simply put, I'm not talking about mothers and fathers who are oppressive and who conduct domestic violence. That's a different discussion. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the general case of the college students in our campus. When I speak, I'm always talking about the general case. That's why when I get specific questions, I tend to be wary. But I'm talking about general cases. General cases. Now, what makes you think the anger at your house will not continue when you have your own house? What makes us think that? We have to be very careful that there are consequences to these things. Consequences of our actions in our home, consequence to that is the follow-up to those anger and to those angry reactions when we have our own homes. When we have our own homes. We have to be very mindful of that. Next point. Switching shoes. Right? And I talked about this before. Remember how I said, if we were in the shoes of that Sahabi, how would we feel? Would we feel like we're in the right? Yeah, I'm in the right. I'm in the right. I did this as a joke to my mom and my dad. They were sitting across each other. I was sitting in the middle, right? And there was a mug between us, right? And the mug on the side facing my dad said, "Wow." The mug facing my mom said, "There's a reason why your name is upside down," or mom, mom said that, whatever. Basically, there was two things to the side of the mug. I asked my dad, I'm like, "Hey, what does this say right here?" Right? Because they were arguing about something. I was like, "What does that say right here?" He was like, "Wow." I asked mom, "What does it say right here?" And then she was like, "Entire sentence, right?" I was like, "Look, you're both right. You're both right." And then they looked at the mug, they're like, "Oh, I see what you're talking about," right? This happens, that we don't understand about switching shoes sometimes. We don't think about the other person. That Sahabi, in his own way, he was right. We already established this at the beginning, right? That he was right. It makes sense. Yarhamukallah. Someone sneezed. I say Yarhamukallah. Makes sense. But in reality, in terms of faith, in terms of rulings, yes, he was wrong. Yes, he was wrong, no doubt. But once we understand and we switch shoes with people that we're upset towards, that we're angry towards, what will happen? What will happen? You'll realize, okay, you know what, this guy actually meant really good. This sister has really good intentions. Why am I even upset at her? Why does he even come to my mind? He's trying his best. The Prophet ﷺ was so good at doing that. He was so good at looking at people and noticing, this guy's trying his best. This guy actually cared. She's actually doing whatever she can. Why am I getting so mad at her for? They're actually trying. At least they're doing something. They're trying to do something good. Let me at least appreciate that, and that will take away the anger. Switch shoes. Switch shoes. Put on their shoes and see how it feels. That yes, I understand you're upset, you're frustrated. Maybe you even you had a long day, and people have been upsetting you the entire day. And this was the very last thing. Well, what tells you that it wasn't their very last thing as well? What tells you that their last thing hasn't already happened? This is their post-last thing, after their last thing. Now they have to deal with you. You have no idea about someone else's schedule. You have no idea about someone else's hardships. You have no idea about what they're going through. You have no idea what their difficulties are. You have no idea about their intentions. Yet, you assume. And yet, you remain in the right. Why? We have to switch shoes. We have to switch shoes to understand. Next thing, big picture. Big picture. And this goes back to thinking about the constant and the variables, right? We'll connect them together. How much does it really play a factor in your overall life? Right? So if you ask me, I'm not going to say I speak for the entire student body, but if you ask me, a B that I got versus a C that I got has not impacted me in my life right now in a class. It hasn't, to be honest with you. It hasn't. Obviously, it's detrimental towards medical students. I understand that. Don't get me wrong. But I'm talking about different things that affect different people differently. Right? So, whatever your frustration is towards, you have to ask yourself, think intellectually, guys. We have to become smarter people, smarter students. Beyond a 4.0, we have to be actually smart about how we deal with life. Like, we have to be intellectual. And when you're intellectual, without arrogance, of course, you're more confident. You carry yourself better, and nothing phases you. And I'm pretty sure we all want that in our life. The fact that when people come our way, we're like, whatever. But everyone looks at us and we're like, wow, who's this? That's how we want to be. Not with arrogance, but we're just so sure and confident about how we conduct ourselves within Sharia, within what Allah likes and He prefers, that it doesn't matter what people say at the end of the day. And you cannot upset me even if you wanted to. Because in the big picture of it all, in the big picture of Jannah, this is nothing. This is nothing. The big picture of it all, and I want to comment on this, because it's going to go to the last point, but let go. In the big picture of it all, going back to these points, the big picture of it all, I gave that point about the exams as a funny joke, that grades will not affect you much. For many, it will not, to be honest. I know people who graduated with degrees in Ann Arbor, and they're doing something completely different, because it didn't change anything. Those 4 or 5 years of their frustration led to nowhere. But they have something good now. They have something good now, even better than what they wanted before. Not my point. Bigger points. What else is out there? The bigger points are what? The breakups in the family. Orgs are easy to get away with. Because once you go home, you can ignore the people, right? Right? If someone from your org really annoys you, upsets you, once you go home, you just go off WhatsApp, right? Ignore them. That's it. It's easy. But things like family, things like breakups, not easy. Because they will follow you. Org finishes after a year, right? So come April, your orgs are done. Good to go, right? Maybe a new org comes in September, I don't know. But come April, if you're still heartbroken, or come April, if your dad is still upsetting you at home, that may not change. So these are the bigger things I want to talk about slightly briefly, if you guys don't mind. Right? Then look, if you want to go back to the point that I made about being an intellectual, being confident, being composed, and being sure about who you are as a Muslim man and a woman, you have to understand these aspects of anger and how to control them. Otherwise you can't. You really can't. The most composed of people are Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So you have to what? You have to learn to let go. When you think about the big picture of it all, and no matter what happened, I want you to think about someone. I remember advising someone. SubhanAllah, it was really funny. It was a job I was working while I was taking physics 2. I still remember, it was in the summertime, I think, or fall, whatever, sometime. And I was working with this other girl that I had just met, right? And we were working as a host to a restaurant or something. And it had been a few weeks of me just a few weeks of me knowing her, that's it, right? And she told me, oh yeah, my boyfriend also works here, stuff like that. I was like, oh, cool. And she was Desi, I was Desi. I was like, okay, she was Hindu. She said, yeah, my boyfriend's Muslim, that's why I know about Muslims, right? I was like, oh, cool, fun fact, nice, okay. So, I didn't expect that, right? That threw me off a little bit. So I was like, okay, so like, what's the plan? Are you guys gonna get married or something? I just start talking, that's how I am, I start talking to people. And her and I started talking more, and she's like, no, his parents are not gonna be okay with it, different religions, I don't know if my parents are gonna be okay with it. Anyway, long story short, after some time talking, because as a host, you don't have much to do. People come, you say, I'll direct you to your seat, you come back to the front, you're just chilling, right? So I'm talking to her, I'm like, okay, so long story short, I came to the last one, I'm like, I think you should break up with him. And she was like, this is like a few weeks of me just working with her, right? It's kind of bold to kind of tell somebody, break up with your boyfriend after, whatever, just knowing someone for a few weeks. She's like, what are you talking about? And she wasn't actually upset, because I think she saw that I was trying to be as genuine as possible, but she was definitely confused. I said, okay, how are you gonna marry him? You gonna wait till his parents die? She's like, maybe. I was like, she said maybe seriously, by the way. Don't get me wrong. She said maybe seriously. Maybe I'll just wait till his parents die. We'll just keep dating, whatever, I'm like, okay. What happens if that doesn't happen? I said, how long have you been dating? 7 years. They've been dating for 7 years, right? I said, okay. I asked her 2 questions. My first question was this: 7 years. Either 4 or 7 years. Let's go with 7, sounds better. So I asked her, how much would it hurt you right now if you guys broke up? She's like, it would hurt a lot. It would hurt a lot. I was like, tell me more about how much it would hurt. So I let her tell me more about how much it would hurt. I was like, would you want to double that? Because 7 years from now, if you have to break up with him and you can't get married, how would you feel about the last 14 years? That was the end of our discussion. But I just asked her a question to think, right? Think about the bigger picture. You have to learn to let go. So why am I talking about this? Because you guys see how you guys thought about the situation, and it's so funny and haha, what? That's crazy, right? Well, that's your life too sometimes. Sometimes you are that person too. I'm sorry. That's just how it is. And just like you saw me advising her, it's the right thing to do, probably not that way, but maybe a different way, but it's still the right action. Because logically it doesn't make sense. Logically you're thinking, hey, that doesn't make sense. Your parents are against it, his parents are against it, and this is 2 different religions. And Allah protect us, we want her to be Muslim, if anything. What are you going to do? Right? Think about your situation. Think about your breakup. In the big picture of it all, where does it take you? Learn to let go. Because whatever point you broke up, ask yourself that same question. Am I glad that I broke up 2 years into it, or would I prefer to wait 4 years? Would I prefer to wait 4 years? Is that what I would prefer? Because what is decreed, my friends. That was supposed to end. You're not stopping that. You want to elongate it? You can. Up to you. It'll just hurt more. With that understanding, we say, okay, you know what? At least it ended. But the biggest point I tell people when they break up, and I tell them, look, you have to really appreciate that when you break off something haram, it is the biggest scapegoat to jumping towards Allah. It is the biggest scapegoat to jumping towards Allah. That Allah is saying, look, you are off, scot-free. I don't have any major sin to hold you down right now. You can come to me with whatever dua you want. You ask, I will give. You just make a few tears come out of your eyes. I will give. Simple. Let it go and just run to Allah. Hadith Qudsi says, if you walk to Allah, Allah runs to you. Imagine if you ran to Allah. Imagine if you ran to Allah. That don't let the frustrations and anger of a breakup or a relationship get to you so much so that it becomes detrimental to your livelihood. That it becomes detrimental to you living your life. Because my brother and sister, wallahi, you have a bigger purpose in this life. And it's not just your degree that's a bigger purpose. It's not just your career that's a bigger purpose. It's not even your family that's a bigger purpose. It's serving the deen that's a bigger purpose. And please be mindful of that. When a relationship ends, and it's an impermissible relationship, when a relationship ends, and it's a relationship Allah dislikes, Allah hates, Allah disapproves of, that's Allah's way of saying, oh my slave, come to me. Oh my slave, come to me. Because I'm giving you all the chances you can have right now to come to me at full force, with nothing holding you back. No late night texts that are impermissible. Nothing like that. You and me, only thing late night happening is tahajjud perhaps, dua perhaps, crying perhaps. And you have the opportunity for that. And I also tell people when they go through, I'm like, you know what you have right now? When people go through breakups, I'm like, you know what you have right now that you didn't have before? What? You have more time now. I promise you, you have more time now. You have more time now. Utilize that time to make yourself a better person. Utilize that time to make yourself a smarter person. Learn more. I'm going back to the same thought. Become intellectual. Don't just think it's for other people to do. No, you become that person of intellect. That you preach and you teach and you educate and you help and you motivate. Do all of those things. Learn to let go. That's the last point that I want to say. And you make dua to Allah. Allah, you improve us. You improve us. That when I get angry, Allah, you control my anger. That you allow me to be patient with people when I'm angry. That you allow me to think of other people and allow me to be in their shoes when I'm angry. That you allow me to be sentimental and gentle and kind and merciful. Because if someone else were to be angry with me, I would hate it, Ya Allah. So why would I be angry with somebody else? I hate it when people are angry with me. It makes me so sad and upset when people are angry with me. It's such a harsh feeling when someone looks down upon me out of anger. Why would I do it to somebody else? Allah control my anger. Allah control my anger. Whether it's my exams, whether it's my professor, whether it's my family, whether it's my mother and my father, Allah want me to be a service to my mother and father. These are the things we need to understand. These things will instill good akhlaq, good character, good manners, good etiquette, good adab into our lives. That's what we need to do. That's how we need to think about it. And I talked about breakups as a big portion of it. I'm sorry to detract from the point. Maybe this should have been the Metropolitan Students Association lecture, but this is very relevant to us. It really is. I don't know what else to do about it. We don't have lectures about it. I gotta talk about it somewhere, right? We don't have lectures about it, right? So I gotta talk about it somehow. So that's what we're talking about. But anger does not only come from breakups. Breakup is not the biggest thing in your life. It's not. You have to realize that. Intellectual people, ulul albab, people of thought and intellect, they understand that. Allah talks about ulul albab all throughout the Quran, right? Right? If you read the Quran, you understand that. Allah talks about them. Look at them. Look, if you have time today, Google it. Go to Quran.com and type in ulul albab and see every time they come up and see why they're referred to. Why? Right? But think like this. We have to be sharper, guys. We have to be sharper. There's a select number of you here, and I told you this in the beginning of the lecture, the first day, that Allah chose you to be here. Allah picked you to be here. Allah wants you to be here. As some form of guidance. Allah wants me to be here. To every reminder, I give us a reminder for myself. First and foremost. And then whatever is left is for you guys, which you guys can take and can benefit from. But we have to understand that we cannot let anger get in the way of our life. Anger cannot get in the way of our life. And yes, when the past comes back and moments of anger comes into our lives and we get angry and upset, I understand that. Again, feeling anger is okay. Feeling anger is okay. But just like Rasulullah ﷺ waited until the salah ended to comment, we have to wait. And that waiting time is a variable we have to focus on. And the more we wait, the more we will realize the people that we're angry at are actually very genuine, are actually very like sincerely sincere, very caring, and they're just good people. We just misunderstand them, right? So let's keep that in mind, inshallah. We'll conclude with that, inshallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. جزاكم الله خير. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.